Reluctant Vikramarka went back to the tree, took down the corpse from the top of the tree, put on the earthen cloth, and walked silently to the burial ground as usual. Then Bethala in the corpse said, Raja, I do not know who encouraged you to do such a hard work with so much labor. What will you get after the achievement? Wealth? Kirta? Or are you expecting both? It is very rare that one person deserves both. He who is wise uses his free will only for either of these two. When it is not like that, it is necessary to make fun of each of the four people. As an example of this, I will tell you the story of two poets. Listen without knowing the effort. He continued to say, once upon a time, Prasanyu, a poet, reached the city of Pataliputra in order to make his poetry heard and earn a kingdom. Then Mahasara, who was living in Pataliputra, was known to be a lover of literature. Prasanna made many efforts for Rajdarshan. But, because of the obstruction of the royals, he confided his pain to a jeweler. The merchant heard all this and said, I only know the value of gems, the value of poetry is unknown. I do not have the power to give you royal vision. Give any bribe to the royals and do good and get royal vision. Prasanna got angry at those words and quickly recited a poem. The meaning of the verse is that it is better for a king who listens to the poetry of the poets who have bribed the princes, not to hear his own poetry. Even though the jeweler did not understand the verse, Devadasu, who had just entered the shop to buy gems, heard it. He is the courtier of Mahasara. Everyone says that if he opens his mouth, Sarasvati will speak. Devadas, who could equally entertain scholars and laymen, was highly respected by everyone in that kingdom. Seeing Devadas, the jeweler cordially invited him. Devadasa motioned to the merchant not to tell him who he was, and looked at Prasanna's side and said, You are looking like great poets. They had to turn to the poets of Rajasthan instead of the princes for royal darshan. He said. In response to this advice, Prasanna recited another poem. After listening to Prasanna's poetry, the king realizes that he has heard poor poetry so far and dismisses his court poets and appoints Prasanna in their place. The meaning of the poem is that none of the poets of the kingdom will give Prasanna a chance to visit the kingdom because of that fear. Devadas immediately clapped his hands and said, Your poetry is very great. But, about Mahasar's court poets, someone gave you wrong information. I, myself, can give you royal vision. He told him who he was. Prasanna got upset and said, I spoke as if I didn't know who they were. I feel like you are a guru. He said, Exaggerated poetry is only embellishment. Devadasa then took Prasanna to Mahasura and told him how he had met Prasanna. Mahasara happily said, If Devadas is praised, you must be great poets. After hearing Prasanna's poetry, he appreciated it and made him one of his court poets. Meanwhile, religious strife broke out among the people of that country. The people divided into sects like Virashaivas, Viravaishnavas, Buddhists, and Jains and started to perpetrate violence against each other. Mahasara made many efforts to change people's thinking. But, there was no result. Then Mahasura's minister said to him, Lord, only good books can change the minds of people. The Vedas proclaim that God is one. Everyone respects the Vedas. If the Vedasara can be explained in a colloquial language, there will be a change in the mindset of the people. He said. King Mahasara liked this advice. It occurred to him that Devadas was the only one capable of doing this work. However, the minister said, It is not possible for one person to be able to explain the essence of the Vedas in a colloquial language. I have heard that Prasanna is as good as Devadas. Give your responsibility to both of them. He said. Mahasara called both these poets and explained what the minister had said. Prasanna replied, In order to make the Vedasara understandable to common people, we need to understand it first. It is not a one-man or two-man job. One should hold discussions with great scholars and then start writing poetry. He said. Devadasa said, I don't need anyone's help in this matter. I alone can complete this task. I want a 2-month deadline. Asked the king. Mahasara immediately entrusted the task to the two poets and said, Whoever completes the poem first, I will reward them with 1 lakh varhas. He said. Immediately both the poets started their efforts. Devadas was a great scholar in Sanskrit. No matter how complicated the subject, he can understand it. Thus he memorized the Vedas and proceeded to prepare poetry in colloquial language. 2 weeks earlier than expected, Devadasa's poetry was finished. Prasanna understands Sanskrit, but is not proficient in that language. He approached some Vedic scholars, understood all the necessary things and started writing poetry. Because of this it took him 2 months to complete the poem. From time to time, Devadas has been getting to know the progress of Prasanna's poetry through others. He did not consider it an honor that he wrote the poem before Prasanna. Everyone should prove that Prasanna can't write better than him. With such thoughts, Devadasa stopped until the completion of Prasanna's poem, went to the king and said, "Great Lord, me and Prasan completed the poem at the same time. Give a prize to the best writing among these." He said. This became a serious problem for Mahasaru. He usually took the help of Devadas to select the best works. Now if there is a competition for Devadas writing, who will be the judge? At such a time, it was the fortune of the Mahasar, Chiranjeevi, an all-round scholar, came to Pataliputra while wandering the country. The Mahasara cordially invited him, told him his problem and asked him to be the judge. Chiranjeevi recited the two kavyas attentively and said that both were the best and both poets deserved the prize. While listening to that, Devadasa said, "My poetry is the result of my only talent. Although I finished 2 days earlier than Prasanna, I waited 2 weeks to give him a chance." Prasanna discussed Vedasara with many people and then composed the poem. Before deciding the gift eligibility, you should not forget this point. He said. Chiranjeevi was surprised. "You alone have translated the Vedasara into poetry in 6 weeks so wonderfully in colloquial language? Can't believe it." He said. Devadasa replied, "I have done more miracles than this. I translated the Mahabharata in 1 year and the Ashtadasa Puranas in 2 years, all by myself in colloquial language." He said. "What he said is true," said Mahasara. "Then, after 6 weeks, I finished writing the Vedasara in verse. Why did I not receive the prize immediately? Why have you brought it to me now?" He asked. Anyone who thoroughly knows the characteristics of poetry can easily know the difference between Na Kavya and Prasanna's Kavya. I wanted to take the prize for writing a great poem, Kaka, who wrote it first. Said Devi. "In this matter, what is your opinion?" Chiranjeevi asked Prasan. "Arya, I am not versed in Sanskrit like Devadas. Thus I am always younger than Nayana. I decided to write this poem not for the prize but to work for the people. Equally as my poetry, I wonder if I have risen to such a height. Devadas is always important to me." Said Prasanna. Chiranjeevi immediately told Mahasara to give the entire gift to Prasan. He did the same. Bethala told this story and said, because King Mahasara accepted the decision made by King Chiranjeevi, great injustice was done to Devadas, who was a great poet and scholar. What is the real reason for lifelong bias in this matter? Why did he admire Prasan who was less talented than Devadas? If you know the answer to this doubt and do not say it, your head will explode. Said. Vikramarka said, there is no doubt that Devadas is the best poet. But, Prasanna also reached his level with the poem he competed in. Hence, now both are equal. Then to whom should the gift be given? One thing becomes clear after examining both the poets. Devadasa not only praises his talent but also boasts that there is no poet better than him. That is a sign of fall. Seeing his insistence that the prize should come to him, it is clear that he has a thirst for fame as well as a thirst for money. Such a person cannot go up a single step in life except going down. Otherwise, Prasanna still has the quality of humility. That means, there is a possibility that he can reach new heights. With two poets who are at the same level, it seems fair to award the poet who is ready to fall and the poet who can still rise. Chiranjeevi did that. There is no prejudice in him. Said. When the king was thus silenced, Bethala disappeared with the corpse and returned to the forest. Fictional.